Hi folks, and welcome to the Transgendered Chef. I am the Transgendered Chef, Diana Clarion. That time that the Christians call Easter is rapidly approaching, and with it come memories. Babka would start cooking about Tuesday and go straight through the week, taking breaks for the obligatory church services on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Then would come the Mass of the Easter Vigil, Sunday at midnight, Sunday morning Easter Mass, and then everyone would pile over Babka's house for food and conviviality, such as the conviviality was. Were I to attempt to recreate Babka's repast, this show would run about 6 hours. So instead, I will pick a couple of the recipes that I remember most fondly, those being Čirek, Paska, baked ham with my own bourbon glaze, colored eggs, and beet horseradish sauce. So why don't we get started? I'll start with Čirek, which we called egg cheese, even though it isn't a cheese at all because there's no rennet involved. Essentially, it is a dozen eggs, quart of milk, half cup of sugar, teaspoon of salt, teaspoon of cinnamon, cooked very slowly until it begins to form curds, which are then shaped into a ball and allowed to drain. Let's get started on that. Okay, to be making the Čirek, I will be using a double boiler. Now that's not absolutely necessary, but if one uses a saucepan over a naked flame or over an electric burner, you really have to be careful, keeping an eye on everything, because you don't want it cooking too quickly, otherwise it's going to turn into a pot full of sweet scrambled eggs, and you really don't want that. Alright, so we'll start cracking eggs. All 12 of them are going to go in here, one by one, mainly because I'm not coordinated enough to crack eggs 3 at a time. Let's see, it's 4 of them, alright. Open up you, there you go. And I do believe I see a piece of shell. Don't want that. No, this recipe is anything but, or supposed to be anything but crunchy. Okay. Dropped another shell in there. Alright, with 12 eggs cracked into this guy, and with all the little pieces of shell removed, get out of there, where did you go? He's hiding. Alright, there you go, there you go. Now, let's get back to it. We'll break the yolks. And whisk this stuff up. Really, really, really nicely. Get broken, you're supposed to break. Just get the eggs all nicely whisked. Now we'll open up that quart of milk. If I can do it with my fingers all slippery from the eggs, and start that whisking into this arrangement. All right. Get all that nicely combined. Let's see, get that sugar going into this. Getting it all nicely stirred in. Now for some salt. And that teaspoon of cinnamon. Now it's going to take a little while to get this incorporated because ground cinnamon doesn't exactly like to get wet. But you want to make sure that you've got it all going before you start the cooking. Otherwise you're going to end up with a marbled arrangement. I don't know, it might be a little pretty, but such is the way it goes. Okay, now that we're basically all incorporated, we're going to head over to the stovetop. Alright, this is where the fun starts. If you can see this, the water in the bottom of the double boiler is going at a low boil. You don't want it boiling too quickly, otherwise the water will all go away and that won't be fun. We're going to set our timer just to have an idea of where we are for a half hour. Yes, I said a half hour. And we are going to place the top of the double boiler over the bottom and begin stirring. And we're not going to stop. If you let up on the stirring, as I said before, you're likely to end up with sweet scrambled eggs, and that's not exactly what you want here. We're going to keep the stirring going until curds start forming and the whey separates. And then we're going to go on to our next stage. So yeah, this recipe here, while in theory it is very simple, it's quite labor intensive. So let's intensify the labor. Alright, I think you can see that this is getting a little thick here. We've been going for about 15 minutes and we still have a whey to go. See what I did there? But here's an idea of how this stuff cooks up. Now, may I caution those of you who might go onto the internet and look for a way to do it yourself with a double boiler. Please don't. Many moons ago, I actually tried doing a do-it-yourself double boiler by putting one saucepan on top of another, the way some internet sites indicate, and the top pot ended up going about 3 feet in the air because of the steam pressure that built up in the bottom of the double boiler. An actual double boiler is engineered to allow steam to escape at the junction between the top and the bottom. So, I mean, if you don't have a double boiler and you really don't want to buy one, the best thing I would say to do is just to go in a saucepan over a very low heat and be very careful with it. Keep that stirring going. I mean, in this, I have to keep the stirring going, otherwise it won't turn out the way I'm looking for it to turn out. But the chance of things going south, if you don't pay careful attention to a saucepan over a naked flame, is all the greater. So, I mean, if you've got the cash and you don't have a double boiler, I would suggest getting one, because they are extremely useful. I don't use this every day, but the days I do use it, I am so glad I have it. Anyway, this is beginning to get pretty darn close to done. I'm going to allow this to cook for a few more minutes, stirring all the way, so it might not take the entire half hour here. It's been about 20 minutes so far. So you see how the time goes here. Alright, I would say that we're pretty well done here. And what you're looking at right now is a colander lined with a few layers of cheesecloth. I think I used 3 layers there. And I am going to, as carefully as I can, pour this wonderful Čirek into the cheesecloth. See if we can do it without creating an entire mess. Alright, not too bad, not too bad. I haven't done this in a while, but I still have the touch. I'm going to let that drain for a few seconds. And make sure that I have all of the edges of the cheesecloth ready to go. see what I'm up to here in a minute. Going to gather this up into a bag of sorts. Careful, it's still warm, quite warm. And form this into something of a ball. See if I can get my thumb under this edge of cheesecloth here. I am going to need a mitt. That stuff is still quite warm. Now, okay, here you go. Get over here, you. I'm going to twist this to help it form into the ball and get it to drain a little bit. You saw me cut that butcher's twine earlier. I'm going to use, well, first of all, I'm going to try to have this not come apart on me. I'm going to use the butcher's twine to tie this off, because what comes next is a nice long period where this stuff hangs and drains. Could be, some say, a few hours. I've been known to do it overnight. Alright, there we are. So, we're going to let this hang for a few hours. I would very likely do it over the faucet, but it's going to go overnight, because I'm just going to let it drain really nicely. So what I'm going to do is reach off camera, knock over the bowl of cat food, and set up an arrangement here. See if I can get a spoon that's long enough. There, that'll do it. Just wrap this excess cheesecloth around the handle of the spoon. See if I can tie it into a knot, and hopefully I'm not going to get too far in the way of the camera. Okay, reach over. See if we can stick the end of this in here. Not such an easy thing. So instead of that, I'm just going to cut some more butcher's twine. And tie this cheesecloth bag to the handle of the spoon here. See if we can do it right. Okay, this actually may have it. Yeah, me and my lack of coordination. It gets to be a pain in the arse at times. But okay. Okay, let's see if we've actually got it here. Yeah, there we go. See if I can bring this a little closer. And just the way the bag made of the cheesecloth with the Čirek inside, just hanging over the stock pot and slowly draining. And after this has cooled a little while, I'm going to stick it into the defriginator and let it continue to drain. And then we'll come back to this. Alright, the Čirek has been draining overnight. And let's see what we can do about opening up our cheesecloth and having a look at the wonderful, wonderful Čirek. Okay, there you are. Throw that butcher's twine away. Round. And let's get this. Perfect. Unwrap. And here we are. Sylvia likes it too. We have our nice little ball of Čirek all ready for wrapping and putting away while we do the rest of our recipes. Let's wrap this up and let's get set up for the Paska. Okay, now that the Čirek is done, we can get on to the Paska. Paska being a sweet Easter bread, a little heavy on the butter and the eggs. It makes a great sandwich with the leftover ham from the main dinner. To make it, we're going to be using half a cup of whole milk, 6 tablespoons unsalted butter, 2 tablespoons sugar, 2½ teaspoons salt, tablespoon of yeast. Now if you buy yeast by the packet, just use 1 packet. A packet of yeast is 2¼ teaspoons. A tablespoon is 3 teaspoons. The 1 packet will work. And then 5½ cups of flour. I have it divided into 2 cups, 3½ cups. Cup of yellow raisins, about ½ pound. Cup of warm water, about 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And ultimately 5 eggs. 2 of these will be used whole, 2 of them will be the egg yolk only, and 1 egg to brush the Paska before it bakes. Let's get to work on it. We'll start by scalding the milk, which is a process of bringing the milk just barely to a boil over rather low heat. What this does is denatures the casein, which is a protein, the main protein in the milk, and some of the enzymes that can get in the way of the action of the yeast. Now there are those who say that the pasteurization process used on milk in the modern age obviates the scalding, but I do it anyway just because I'm a traditionalist. So you want to warm the milk slowly, and basically keep it stirring so it doesn't burn. Actually, so the proteins don't denature to the bottom of the pan and make a big mess. This will take a few minutes. Not very long at all, but long enough to be significant. When bubbles start to form at the edge of the milk, the scalding will be done. Okay, we have a little bit of bubbling and a little bit of steam coming off the top, so we are indeed done with the scalding. We will melt the butter into the milk. And sprinkle the salt in while we're at it. Okay, get that stirring, get the butter melting, and we will let it cool to a lukewarm. You definitely want to cool it down. So you don't want the liquid too hot once we get the yeast in, because the yeast won't like that very much. Okay, next step. Okay, step the second consists of pouring that cup of warm water into a bowl. You do want a rather large bowl for this. Adding the sugar, and sprinkling the yeast over the top of the water, giving that a little bit of a stir. This is proofing the yeast, basically giving it a kickstart. Get the little yeasties going for the addition of the flour. The sugar is there as lunch for the yeast. Okay. Let's get this little bit of recalcitrant yeast off the spoon here. Yeah, and now we're just going to let this sit in the bowl for about 10 minutes to get foamy. Be back in about 10. Alright, as you can see, the yeast is foamed up a bit. That means that it's nicely active. So we will add some of the flour here. We're going to end up adding the first 2 cups. Just going to add that to the yeast mixture and start the stirring going here. Now you see some lumps. We're not going to worry about those. This is bread. It isn't a gravy. Okay, a little bit more of the flour. Okay, now it's getting a little on the stiff side, so we're going to go ahead and pour the milk, butter, and salt mixture in, with the flour as a buffer, and with the milk mixture cooled down, we're not all that worried about killing the yeast anymore. I'm just going to get that, yeah, there we are. I can drop the rest of the flour in. And get the raisins ready to go here. Stir, stir, mix, mix. Now we're adding the raisins now. Well, this is a batter. Because if we wait until it's a dough, it'll be an absolute bear to get the raisins incorporated. And I cleaned that up. Okay. Here we are with the wonderful, wonderful raisins. And now we can get to work with the eggs. Almost forgot those. Don't want to do that. Okay, egg number 1. Egg number 2. Trying valiantly to not get the shells in here. Bread shouldn't be crunchy unless it's toasted. Nice. Stirring. And now comes the fun. It's been a while since I've separated an egg. I used to be pretty good at it. I don't know about now. We're going to find out. We're using the 2 egg yolks here, so I'm going to carefully, as carefully as I can, crack the shell and use my fingernail to pip around it. Pull that off and start to pour off the albumin, better known as the egg white. Slip the yolk into the other half shell to get the rest of the albumin out. And we'll drop that in. Didn't do too badly there. See how it goes on the other one. Nice little crack. Again with the fingernail, thumbnail here, to pip around the eggshell. Doing my best to pour off the albumin, and darn it, I broke the yolk. Yeah, that happens occasionally. So I'll just do the best I can with that. I mean, it's not going to kill anything. I already have albumin in from the first 2 eggs. Now we can add some flour here. We're looking for a soft dough that's going to pull away from the sides of the bowl as we stir it. Okay, here we are. Just a little stirring going. My babka used to cradle the bowl in her left arm while she stirred with her right hand. But I'm trying to get this on camera, so that's a little impractical here. And what I've developed as a means of mixing flour into a dough is actually to use the back of the wooden spoon to push the flour into the dough as the dough is stiffening and harder to stir. It gets the job done. And any unevenness is immaterial because we're going to be pulling out the breadboard soon. Okay. A little bit more here. And pushing the flour into the dough. And as this gets a bit stiffer, I'm eventually going to put the spoon aside and just use my fingers. But I don't want the dough to be too sticky when I do that, because I'm running my own camera and I don't want the camera full of sticky bread dough. That would not be a very good idea. Okay. Here we are. Almost there. Almost there. Yeah, this is looking pretty good. Go to test with the fingers here. Okay, there's just a tiny bit of flour yet of the 5.5 cups. And I think I'm going to end up putting that in. And as I say, I'm putting the spoon away and just going with my fingers to get this flour going here. And almost there. Almost there. Okay, now what we've got is a dough that is not sticking to the side of the bowl as we work with it. It still feels rather moist, which is a good thing. Don't want it all dry. That'll just screw up the texture of the Paska. And here we have one of my very, very favorite pieces of cooking equipment, my breadboard. This is wonderful for kneading doughs, and I just love these little measurements here for estimating the size of pie and tart crusts. Start by sprinkling just a little bit of flour so the dough won't stick. And I'm going to bring out our Paska dough. And we're going to knead this for about 10 minutes. What the kneading does is develops the gluten. Now you may be asking what the heck that's all about. Well, gluten is a set of proteins in the the wheat kernels. Actually, all cereal grains have gluten. They are storage proteins, storing food for the germinating plant. The kneading stretches these protein strings and interlocks them to give the bread its texture. And to do the kneading, basically grasp the far edge of the dough, fold it over, and with the heels of the hands press it together. Then give it a quarter turn, fold and press again. Now if the dough is sticking to the breadboard, you can sprinkle it with a bit more flour, just a tiny bit. Don't want to overdo it. And then continue the kneading process. The flour on the board will help the bread dough avoid sticking. As you knead, the flour will also be incorporated into the dough, which is why you want to be careful about how much you add. You don't want the dough to be too dry. That will that'll give you a horrible texture and actually impede the rising. Okay. Thought it might be sticking a little bit, but not really. Okay, now it's getting a little sticky. Tiny, tiny, tiny bit. We'll be doing this for about 10 minutes, but eventually do this enough and get to the point where you can tell that you've done enough kneading by the way the dough feels. It'll offer some degree of resistance to the kneading, and it will also slowly spring back. When you stick your finger in. Just a little bit of a stick there, and I don't know if you can see this, but you can see how the dough is actually starting to spring back, so we're almost done with the kneading. Just give it a couple more turns. I don't know if the microphone is picking this up, but as I'm pressing the dough together, you can hear the heel of my hand come away, you know, a little bit of stick. You want a little bit of that. You don't want to eliminate that stickiness entirely. That's too dry a dough. Okay, give it the old finger test. Yeah, we are pretty well there. So we can roll this into a ball. And reach for the bowl that we were using when we were first mixing the dough. Some people like to use a greased bowl for the rising portion of this. I've found that I get decent results just with the little bit of flour that remains inside. We'll stick that into the bowl, turn it around a couple times, get a tiny little bit of the flour on there. Pull out a towel, cover that over, and we're going to let this rise for about an hour and a half. We want it pretty much double its size now. So get this covered, have it in a nice warm place, which is my entire apartment right about now, and I'll see you in about an hour and a half. It's been about 90 minutes. Let's have a look. And we're doing nicely. Very, very nicely. So now we are going to prepare our little baking pan, which happens to be a ceramic souffle pan. They say it's oven safe. I'm going to trust them. My babka had a metal pan. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to find one like it. The pan she had, that was maybe 40 years ago. And it perhaps gone out of fashion since then. I'm going to grease the inside of this. Make sure that it's well greased. Don't want the Paska sticking. Okay. Bring the risen dough out. Ball it up again. Try to get the cracks out of it. Okay. Into the pan we go. And we're going to let it rise again for a while. About 45 minutes to an hour. So, cover over. Let it rise. And we will be back. All right, we are at the end of our rise time. Let's have a look. Pretty. Not bad at all. So now we are going to go back to that last egg. Crack that baby into a bowl. Add about a tablespoon of water. And whisk that up really, really nicely. That is going to go atop our loaf with a little pastry brush. Just give that a nice painting here. Generously painting our loaf. And then we're going to put this on a tray here. That is going to go into a cold oven. And once it's in that cold oven, I'll turn the oven up. I'll turn the oven on to 350 Fahrenheit and let this bake for half hour to 45 minutes until it's a nice golden brown. Now you may wonder why I'm putting it into a cold oven. Over the years as I've baked bread, one of the things I've discovered is putting it into a cold oven, then turning it on rather than putting it into a preheated oven allows the bread to finish rising as the oven comes up to heat. So this is going into the oven off camera. We're turning it on and we're going to let it bake, and I'll be back then. The end of the baking time has approached. I will put a couple mitts on here so I don't burn the heck out of my hands. Open up the oven. Oh, oh my, will you look at this? I'm going to set that on a rack. Let it cool just a tiny bit before I try to handle it. Oh, that is so beautiful. Yeah, I'm going to have to let it cool here for just a little bit, because unfortunately the way this does not have handles the way my loaf pans do, so I can't grasp one end and drop the loaf out. So give it a little bit, give it a little bit, and I shall return to depan the bread. Okay, I've given the Paska a few minutes to cool a little bit. See what we can do. Okay, we are successfully loose. I'm just going to have to turn that over and quickly turn it back. See that a little tiny bit came off one side, but here is a Paska, all ready for Easter dinner, all ready for ham sandwiches after the main dinner. All right, next thing we'll do is get on to the main course. All right, we're coming down to the wire and it's time to prepare the ham. I have here an 8-pound fully cooked semi-boneless shank portion. It will take about 15 minutes per pound, so about 2 hours. If you have a bone in, it will take longer because of the bone, and if you have a fresh ham, it will also take longer, maybe about ½ hour per pound. The deal is that you want to get the meat to a specific temperature. Here with the fully cooked ham, you'll want to go for 140 degrees internal temperature as measured by a meat thermometer. On a fresh ham or a bone-in ham, you'll want to go to 160 internal temperature. That is going to be your guide more than the time per pound. That's just a thumbnail to give you an idea of how long you're dealing with. Now I'll score the fat portion, little boning knife here, and we might as well sharpen it up. And just give it a light scoring diagonally across the fat. Don't want to go through the skin because you don't want to lose all that juicy ham goodness. Okay, now we are going to place this flat side down on a rack in a pan, which I happen to have right over here. So we're going to pick this guy up. I said we're going to pick this guy up. There we go. Hey. Place him on a rack. I'm using the cooling racks I also use for bread in this pan, and then we're going to tent it with aluminum foil and cook it at about 325 for half the allotted cooking time. So in this case it's going to be about an hour. After that hour, I'll start to glaze the ham. So let me get this over here. Nicely tinted. Turn my oven on to 325, pop this guy in, and I'll be right back. While the ham is beginning to cook over there, I'm going to start the glaze. This is my own addition to the Easter menu. We didn't have it when I was growing up, but I found it later and happened to like it. It consists of a cup of orange juice, half a cup of brown sugar, always measured packed, 2 tablespoons of mustard. This happens to be a deli mustard. You can use Dijon, whatever your preference might be, and half cup of bourbon. This is wild turkey. Funny thing is, I can't drink this stuff. I developed a learned aversion to it. Many years ago, I was waxing my car on a Saturday and to go to a Mensa monthly meeting, and the fumes from the wax were starting to get to me a little bit. And when I was at the meeting, I had a Manhattan, and that just sort of triggered something, and I happened to throw up, and I could never drink bourbon after that. But cooking with it is no problem. So I'm going to cook with some wild turkey here. Let's go over the stove. Alright, I have a saucepan, small one, set to low heat. Pour the orange juice in. Then the brown sugar. Getting orange juice everywhere, of course. Just break up that pack of brown sugar and start to stir up. Then we'll dump in the mustard. And le bourbon. And just stir this until I don't hear the little grinding sounds that the crystals of brown sugar make, which means that the brown sugar will have been nicely dissolved into this. Now this is going to go onto the ham in the last half of the cooking. Right now I'm more or less bringing the ham up to temperature for glaze. And then when I do glaze the ham, I'm going to turn up the heat, brush this stuff over really nicely. We're just about getting there. And by the way, don't worry about the bourbon. The ethanol in the bourbon is going to boil off, so nobody's going to get plastered from dinner at least. And while the glaze is nicely warming in a Dutch oven, I've got 3 beets, washed, trimmed. I'm going to boil these beets for the beet horseradish sauce. So to do that, I will cover with cold water. To about an inch. And bring these guys to a medium boil. And that's going to take probably 45 minutes. Yeah, beets are tough customers. So we'll let those go. Ham is going downstairs in the oven. Glaze is pretty much ready. I'll be back in a little bit. Okay, the beets are fork tender, so I can turn those off. And you can hear the wonderful little music from the timer, which means that the first part of the cooking is done. So let's open up the oven. Pull out Mr. Ham, see how he looks. Oh yeah, we're coming along nicely. So the glaze is nicely prepared. We're going to start pouring and brushing. Just get some of that stuff over the ham here. And then I'm going to retint this. Crank the heat up to 4 1/4. And every 10 minutes or so, I'll come back and baste a little bit more with the wonderful glaze. At the very end, I'll take the tent off to get things nice and crispy. And there we are. I'll be back in a little bit. Okay, the beets are nicely cooled. I can actually pick them up and work with them. I'll need to peel them, which is no problem at all. They've been boiling so long, the skins just slip right off. Get my hands all nice and red in the process. Okay, we've got one of these guys pretty well done. Let us grab our knife and cut the remaining stem off, which is now a lot easier than it would have been trying to do this raw. And when I get finished with this, I'm going to put the beets through this box grater over to my right. Get them nicely grated for the beet horseradish sauce. Okay, just a little bit more to go here. Pretty well done. Let me grab some paper towels for my nicely red fingers. Get this Dutch oven out of the way. set this guy up. Put the beets through the small holes of the box grater. Get a reasonably fine grating effect here. There's one. Yeah, I'm not grating them all the way down because I don't want fingers in the beet horseradish sauce. That's an extra bit of flavor that would not necessarily add to the experience. Okay, here we are. And we have some nice grated beets in our box grater. And to that, as soon as I clean up a little bit here, I am going to add a 1/4 cup of prepared horseradish. Now, my original recipe calls for horseradish root. I had a heck of a time trying to find it in the budget grocery stores that I frequent. So I went with the prepared horseradish. When I put the recipe up for this, I will include both methods for those who want to do it the old-fashioned way and those who want to do it quick and easy. Just stir that in. And mix well. And there we have our beet horseradish garnish. It's going to be really great on sandwiches made from leftover ham. Lightly cover this, and then I'm going to go wash my hands, so I'll be back in a little bit. And here is the ham. Now, isn't he looking pretty? We're going to let him cool down a little bit, and I'm going to take care of one last item for this repast. Those of you who have been following this series may remember the Transgendered Chef second episode, the Ash Wednesday menu. And you may remember that I had reserved some onion skins while I was making the halushki. I'm going to do something interesting. I'm going to take the onion skins off of the onion and put them in a bowl for later use. Here's where those onion skins find their use. I have the bag of skins. I'm going to put them in my saucepan. Set some eggs over the onion skins. I'm using half a dozen because there's only me to eat them. Then I'm going to boil these eggs with the onion skins. Do that. I'll cover them with cold water. Set them on the stove top. Bring to a boil. And once they are boiling, I will let them continue to boil for 10 minutes. And if all goes well, that should give us some perfect colored hard-boiled eggs in the manner that my babka would do. And here we have the eggs that just come to the boil. They've got another 9 minutes or so to go. I hope you can see here how the reddish-brown pigment from the onion skins is going into the water and is being picked up on the eggshells. That's the whole coloring mechanism going on right there. Got about another 8 minutes to go, and then I'll douse these with cold water, and we will be just about ready to eat. And here we are. Our wonderful repast is before us. I've done some pre-slicing, so I didn't take too much time. And I see that somebody is a little bit hungry. All right, Sylvia, how about a piece of ham for you, huh? Here. Hey, you. Let's see what she does with that. All right, we have I'm jumping right to the leftovers part of the meal here. Slice of Paska. And a bit of the ham. And now we're going to put the Čirek atop that. Slather on a little bit of the Beet Horseradish. I think I kept calling it a sauce. I know it really isn't, it's a garnish. And it's also getting all over my hands and my table here, which is not a good thing. Okay. You get back in there. Another slice of Paska. Good flavor, good memories. I remember, babka. I remember. So, this is going to last little old me a whole long time. So I think I'm going to do a quick tip or two later on to give you an idea of how I'm going to handle all the leftovers going here. And incidentally, here is what we have by way of the colored eggs. Wonderful, wonderful reddish brown color from the onion skins. A whole lot better in my mind than any of those commercial food colorings, because those commercial food colorings don't have any memories attached to them. These do. Another bite. So, I will be putting these recipes up at dclarian.smordnet.net/kitchen. And I'm hoping that you folks will like and subscribe. And until next time we meet, Bon appetit.